The studio lights bathed the Fox News set in a steady, unblinking glow, turning into a stage where every gesture carried consequence. Representative Jasmine Crockett sat poised beneath that light, calm, centered, and sharp in a navy blazer, the microphone clipped neatly to her lapel. She had come to discuss recent legislation, complex, procedural policy that seldom trended online but shaped daily lives. The atmosphere was cool and methodical until the air shifted. The temperature seemed to drop the moment Pete Hegseth, Fox host and decorated veteran, entered the studio carrying a thin folder tucked under his arm like courtroom evidence. His shoes clicked once, a sound that instantly commanded attention. "Congresswoman Crockett," he began, voice honed to a prosecutorial edge. "Before we get to scheduled topics, I want to address something that has just come to light." The camera tightened on Crockett's face as he flipped open the folder, holding up a document toward her. "We've obtained voting records showing that you opposed every single bill supporting veterans' benefits in the last session. Care to explain why you're working against our nation's heroes?" A tense silence blanketed the room. Even the softening of the cameras seemed to fade. What had been a policy discussion had turned into an ambush, live on one of America's most watched networks. Crockett didn't flinch. She took a slow, deliberate breath, a faint smile tugging at the corner of her lips, the calm of someone who'd seen storms before. Viewers would later say everything changed in that breath. The show cut to a teaser, promoting explosive political moments you won't see anywhere else. But the stakes here were real, reputational, political, deeply personal. Hegseth wasn't just another cable host. A Princeton graduate, Army National Guard veteran with 3 combat deployments, and author of books on patriotism. He carried immense weight with his audience. At 43, his on-air style was sharp, relentless, and steeped in conservative conviction. Across from him sat Jasmine Crockett, 42, a former civil rights attorney turned rising Democratic voice. Known for her sharp arguments and quick composure, she had earned a reputation for exposing political theatrics with surgical precision. Only 3 days earlier, she had gone viral for condemning what she called performative patriotism, politicians who wrapped themselves in the flag while cutting veterans' health care funding in fine print. For viewers, this was more than an interview. It was a collision of two Americas, Hegseth's traditional conservatism against Crockett's progressive realism. "While you were giving speeches about supporting the troops," Hegseth pressed, "your record tells a different story." He lifted another page. "You voted no on 7 consecutive veterans' bills. How do you explain that to the service members in your district?" The director cut to a split screen. Hegseth's face firm with accusation, Crockett's expression calm and analytical. "Congresswoman, are you even listening?" he snapped. Crockett looked up, unbothered. "I am listening very carefully, Mr. Hegseth. Please continue. I'd like to hear all your points before I respond." Her composure unsettled him. Hegseth regrouped. "Let's talk about your floor speech, the one accusing Republicans of performative patriotism. You claim to support troops, yet your record shows the opposite. Isn't that hypocrisy?" On screen, a graphic displayed read, "No, votes beside patriotically titled bills." He read a message from his phone. "As a Marine who served 3 tours, I am disgusted by Representative Crockett's record. How do you respond to veterans in your district who feel betrayed?" he demanded. The camera widened. No anger, no stumble, just Crockett's steady smile. "I believe it's my turn to speak now, isn't it, Mr. Hegseth?" she said smoothly. "Before I address your points, I'd like the producers to display the full titles of the bills you mentioned, not just the abbreviated names. Would that be possible?" The control room froze. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The balance of power had shifted, and the ambush was no longer his control. He gave a curt nod. "I think viewers deserve to see exactly what those bills contained," Crockett said evenly. "Full transparency is important when we discuss congressional voting records." As the control room scrambled to display the full titles of the bills, something shifted. The ambush was transforming from spectacle to substance. "While they're working on that," Crockett continued, calmly opening her folder, "let me address your claims directly." Her voice was low but steady. "First, Mr. Hegseth, thank you for your military service. I truly mean that. The sincerity in her tone landed like a reset. Second, she said, sliding a document across the desk, H.R. 4749. You presented it as a bill to increase disability compensation for combat-injured veterans. But it was a 278-page omnibus bill. Pages 113 through 147 included provisions to privatize 5 VA hospitals and cut staffing at 17 more. That is why I, along with 41 other representatives, including 3 Republicans with military backgrounds, voted against it. A quiet murmur rippled through the studio crew. Next, the Veterans Housing Stability Act. Crockett continued. That bill was H.R. 3289. While it did contain housing measures, it also carried a rider that would have reduced funding for the post-9/11 GI Bill by nearly 18%. I voted against cutting our veterans' education benefits. I would never support that. Hegseth began. I'm not finished, Mr. Hegseth, Crockett said politely, but with new steel in her tone. You had several minutes to present your case. I believe I deserve the same courtesy. Silence returned. Regarding the VA Medical Center, she went on, that was buried in Budget Resolution H.R. 22. Yes, I voted against it, but I also co-sponsored an amendment to separate VA funding from the larger package because I supported the funding but opposed unrelated cuts. After the bill failed, I worked through a separate appropriations channel to secure an additional $1 million for the VA center in my district. She held up a letter. Here's a thank you note from the American Legion, dated 2 weeks ago, acknowledging that work. I'll gladly share copies with your team. The director tried to cut to a wide shot, but Crockett continued. As for the veteran you quoted from social media, James from Dallas, we checked our office records. We have no record of a Marine veteran by that name ever contacting us. Perhaps he reached out to you instead of his representative. The implication was unmistakable. Anecdotes weren't evidence. What we do have, she said, unlocking her phone, are messages from veterans in my district. She read aloud. Thank you for standing up against the privatization attempt hidden in H.R. 4749. As a VA nurse and Army veteran, I know how dangerous that would be. Sergeant Maria Gutierrez, U.S. Army, retired. She scrolled again. I criticize your vote until I read the full bill. Thank you for protecting the GI Bill. Lieutenant Commander Wilkins, U.S. Navy, retired. Setting the phone down, Crockett met Hegseth's eyes. I understand political theater, truly, but veterans' issues deserve honesty, not selective facts. The silence was thicker now. The ambush hadn't rattled her. It had backfired. Hegseth shuffled his papers, visibly unsettled. One more point, Crockett added. My father served in Vietnam. My brother is active duty Air Force. When I talk about supporting our troops, it isn't a talking point. I'll vote against any bill that uses veterans as political props while undermining their care, no matter how patriotic the title sounds. You're cherry-picking, Hegseth countered, grasping for control. Am I? She replied, sliding a printed screenshot across the desk. This is from your own Fox News website, dated March 17th, praising 3 representatives, including me, for pushing to separate veterans' funding from omnibus bills. That's the very issue we're discussing. The Fox News header was visible under the lights. Her tone softened. I'm happy to debate policy, whether we should privatize the VA or expand it. Those are legitimate disagreements. But stripping away context helps no one, least of all our veterans. In the control room, the producer jabbed a go-to-break cue. The director hesitated, watching the monitor as Hegseth tried one last time. Regardless of your explanations, the fact remains, you voted against bills that would help veterans. Because I refuse to let veterans be used as shields for unrelated agendas, Crockett said firmly, given the full facts, the American people understand that. Gathering her notes, she added, now, we were invited to discuss infrastructure legislation. I'm happy to return to that, or we can continue with veterans policy in full context. The break graphic finally rolled. We'll continue after a short break, Hegseth said tightly. The last shot before commercial showed Crockett, calm and unshaken, while Hegseth shuffled his notes, visibly off balance. What happened next spread far beyond the studio. Within minutes, clips of Crockett dismantling the ambush flooded social media. The hashtag Rocket Response trended at the top of X. Receipts ready. Ambush backfired. Read the fine print. The 90-second clip crossed 2 million views in an hour. Even conservative commentators conceded. Whatever your politics, that was a masterclass in preparation. When the program returned, Hegseth's tone had cooled. The confrontation had ended, and the balance of power on that stage had quietly, irreversibly changed. The internal review at Fox News was unusually tense. Producers admitted the segment's research had relied too heavily on summaries instead of reading the full bill texts. One editor wondered aloud whether the network's graphics team should have confirmed legislative details with policy staff rather than social media posts. For a network used as shaping the narrative, the sudden loss of control was uncomfortable. Outside the studio, the public response was immediate and overwhelming. Veterans groups began debating omnibus bills more openly, many supporting Representative Jasmine Crockett's insistence on transparency in legislative packaging. Across social media, veterans from both parties shared stories of discovering unrelated riders hidden inside bills that claimed to support them. Posts with captions such as "Read beyond the title" and "Don't let anyone use your service as a political prop" became part of a growing online movement. By midweek, late-night shows had picked up the clip. One host paused the video at the moment Pete Hegseth realized Crockett's folder was thicker than his and quipped, "This is the face of a man who brought a talking point to a document fight." Laughter followed, but so did genuine admiration. Viewers recognized preparation, authenticity, and mastery of facts. Political consultants began calling the Crockett Rule. Never enter a hostile interview without knowing every page of the legislation you supported. In her district, veterans who had once doubted her began calling her office to confirm the details to themselves. "I didn't know that was buried in there," one caller said. Crockett replied simply, "That's why we have to read the bills, not just the titles." The moment had transcended partisanship, becoming a civics lesson in real time. Crockett herself refused to treat the exchange as a victory. "It's not about winning a debate," she said in interviews. "It's about making sure people understand what's actually in the legislation." Her communications director described it best. She turned a viral moment into a teachable one. Even Hegseth's response was measured. He shifted focus to mental health and veterans' resources, signaling that the confrontation had raised a level of discourse rather than lowered it. Media scholars soon dissected the exchange as a model of composure and factual command under pressure. Universities screened it in communication and journalism classes. Campaign trainers incorporated it into workshops, teaching future candidates 3 key lessons: know your material, maintain composure, and insist on full context. Months later, Crockett introduced the Transparency in Legislation Act, requiring every congressional bill to include a plain language summary accessible to the public. The bill drew bipartisan support and national attention. Headlines linked it directly to the Fox interview. Crockett turns viral moment into reform. Even Hegseth seemed to internalize the experience. In later broadcasts, he began citing bill numbers and page references before making claims. Viewers noticed. Even Pete double-checks his documents now. One commentator joked, by election season, the clip had become political shorthand for substance over spectacle. To many Americans, it represented a rare moment when truth outlasted theatrics. 6 months later, when asked if the encounter had changed her, Crockett replied quietly, "It reminded me why I ran for office. If we can't explain our votes clearly, we lose the people we serve." That calm clarity, rooted in preparation, composure, and truth, turned a televised ambush into a lasting lesson in civic integrity.